Welcome to Fertility Village. This is your weekly live talk show where community and support come together. With rotating hosts, expert guests, and meaningful conversations, we're here to guide you through the highs and the lows of infertility. Whether you're searching for answers, seeking advice, or just looking for a special place to belong, Fertility Village is your space to connect, learn, and grow. Because it really does take a village, and we are here for you every step of the way. Thanks for joining.
Welcome back, everyone, to another weekly episode of Fertility Village Live. We're so glad you can join us. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Caley, and today we are joined by some very special guests to share the male perspective. We have a panel on infertility through the male perspective today with Tom, Alex, and my husband, Rob. So they're going to answer our questions all about fertility treatment from a man's perspective. And thank you so much for joining us, guys. We'll get right into it.
So many questions.
Yes, there's so many questions. And we want to just start by getting you all to give us sort of a little quick deep dive into what brings you here, what brings you to the fertility world space, and why are you willing to talk with us today about this? Maybe Alex, we'll start with you since you're on the left side for me.
Hi, I'm Alex. I've been in the fertility journey now for going on almost 3, maybe 4 years at this point. And just feel like being able to be openly talk about some of the struggles and sort of stigmas that are associated with the males, I think was very helpful and very knowledgeable for other people to understand how males go through this process and not just the females.
Love that. How
What
about
about
you,
you, Tom?
Hi, I'm Tom Riley. We were on a fertility journey until recently for about 6 years. A lot of people know my wife, Alexi, through her Instagram epic quest for baby Riley. I like to speak out anytime I can. I've been on several panels. There's a lot of community for the partners going through the treatment, but I find there's not a lot for the male partners. So I like to, just like Alex, share as much as I can. I think it helps me and hopefully helps some other people.
And I already know this, but what about you, Rob?
I'm here because of you, or because of us, I guess. Yeah, I watched actually through our 3-year-ish journey,
Yep.
how supportive Oasis was, in having, support groups and people to talk to. And yeah, I didn't have that. So I mean, being able to talk about it, I think men in general don't talk as much as maybe we should, or we're scared to, or there's stigma around it, or we think, you just got to be tough or something. And so, yeah, I'm kind of looking to spread the word where I can, I suppose.
That's awesome. Well, thanks all three of you to being here and for sharing. Again, it can be really, really hard sometimes to share. So I'm going to move in right to our first question. Again, this question is for all of you. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. But what was the most surprising or difficult thing about your journey? Let's start with Rob this time.
I was wondering, I was like, men don't like to talk. And then all of a sudden, who comes off mute? What's the decorum here? Yeah, I think that, there are a couple things. I think just realizing the cyclicity of how often you get to try, and then, and then the mental gymnastics around that was really tough. I think that, and then going into clinics where, the doctors were doing hard sells, and you're trying to advocate for yourself, but you don't kind of know, right? And then from, my perspective, Kaylee's basically a doctor now because she had to kind of do the research and advocate for herself. But, you don't know what you don't know, I guess. And then you walk into these clinics where everyone's like, we also don't know. And you're like, all right. And I think sometimes as a man, you want, and again, I don't want to generalize, but you want answers, you want to solve the problem. And so the fact that you kind of can't solve the problem, and then also the next chance you'll have to solve the problem is next month, that was just, I think that was the most frustrating part for me.
The hurry up and wait. We feel that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Tom? Anything surprising about your journey that you weren't really ready for, expecting?
Yeah, I think we weren't ready or expecting like any of it. A lot of what Rob said. You start the journey and you think, okay, we're in the clinic. This is it. The doctors are saying, yeah, Alexi's young, healthy. Well, this is, we're going to go in there and it's done. And then 6 years later, right? And a lot of heartache
A
and a
long
lot of
journey.
heartbreak and a lot of loss and how experimental it is. And, you don't realize that in the beginning, and afterwards you kind of understand it and accept it and know what world you're in. But in the beginning, it's heartbreaking and grinding that you think, this is a science and they have the answer, but then it's trial and error and trial and error and trial and error. And then, some anger and resentment, like, why didn't you try this the first time? Right? Why didn't you tell us this the first time? I would say that frustrated me the most, where, we'd be at one clinic and we'd say, is there anything else you can test? No, this is it. This is all we can do for you. We can just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So we go to another clinic and they'd say, oh, did they test this? No, they didn't. Well, let's test this. Okay, well, why didn't anyone tell us this? Then they reach the end of their road. Go to another clinic. Well, did they test these 3 things? No, they didn't. Right? So I found that very, very, very frustrating. But it's an emerging science, right? Which you start to understand and start to accept. And all the doctors are trying their best and all the staff are trying their best and they're going off the latest research. But yeah, that surprised and shocked me. And like Rob, that was really, really grinding, I found.
Yeah. What about you, Alex?
How about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both you and you, Tom and Rob. I would say probably the 2 biggest things would be, the first would be advocating for yourself and then doing the research into which clinics are doing what in order to work with what you are trying to achieve and what your issues might help with the research aspect, and just trying to be able to stand up just with having to deal with so many clinics all at once, and like have you doing these trial and errors. And then I would say later on doing the difficult thing of like, okay, well, this didn't work. Do we want to try this again? Making that difficult decision of like, do we want to spend this time period and this amount of money, and then, or do we just want to say we're done and we've literally tried everything, and living with that sort of decision. I say that those were some emotional times for both of us when we were going through this.
I feel like you could see Sarah and I nodding so much during all of what all of you said. We can relate so much to what you said, especially the going to the different clinics. And we're like a broken record over here. Try different clinics. If you haven't explored, explore. Rob, I want to go back to you because you mentioned at the beginning some stigmas around men talking about this subject. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Like, what are some myths and some stigmas around infertility that you think need to be addressed?
I think that, that's a tough question. And I'm the plant. So, I'm not even sure how to answer that. Well, I don't know. I think that it's just, I don't know how I want to answer this. I don't want to generalize and say that men don't talk, but I just can tell you how many golf games that I've been in where, like, I've come home and you've said, how are your friends? And I was like, I don't know, they golfed, and, so even when I brought it up, I think people didn't know how to approach it. Right. Or if I did bring it up, people would approach it and then the next time be like, but you're okay this time, right? Like we don't need to keep going over this, right? Like it's a one and done. We've solved the problem. It's like very like problem solving, I think, more than it is like empathy led, I think sometimes. And again, I don't think it's all men. I just think that, some of the experiences I had were like that, right? And then I think when it comes down to, I guess, like the man's role, I always, I saw like how much you were going through, right? And like it was to your body, right? So like I didn't know what role I was supposed to play. So it's like, do I go in and yell at the doctor for like, you know what I mean? For like doing wrong by my wife or whatever? or do we take the diplomacy tack, right? Because maybe you win more flies with, with honey than vinegar, right? So kind of trying to figure out like how to support myself and how to get what I needed to advocate, to Alex's point, right? Because obviously I wanted to be part of this, and I was part of this, but trying to figure out like the role that I played when everything was kind of happening to you, I think was something that was a little bit difficult for me.
And Tom and Alex, are there any myths or stigmas that really kind of came to the forefront for you when you were going through your journey?
I guess for myself, it was more so from like some family and some friends were like, oh, well, I mean, you guys will get through this. Shouldn't be a problem. Like, you guys have everything under control, at least from like an organizational standpoint. Absolutely. But like the emotional and physical toll, especially on both of us, because it's not just my wife's journey, it's our journey, even though she's doing all the physical aspects of it. And I'm just trying to help support in any way possible. It just no one really fully understands unless they go through this process themselves. Because I have a friend who's sort of doing a very early stages of this, and they're always asking us the questions. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm more than happy to talk and like to tell you like what you can be expecting from the male's perspective, but also like what you'll likely be going through your mindset and what people will probably likely tell you and want to maybe ask you. I'm like, I've been there. These are common things with people who don't understand. So by all means, like, just let me know and I can help when I can.
Yeah. That's so great that you're giving that back to people, and maybe that's not something you had when you started out.
Alex, are people that you're offering help to, are they accepting your help?
Oh,
Are they actually coming
absolutely.
back? Yeah, are they? Okay, that's
Yeah,
good.
I've not had anybody like say, "Oh no, don't worry, it's all good." Like, no, they're very accepting and accommodating to like, oh, and very intrigued of like my journey and sort of my thought process of how this all has transpired, and just to see like where my headspace was at, so that they can sort of almost compare and be almost expecting or understand what is going to happen to them.
Yeah, there's not a lot of community for the male partners out there. Everything, as far as myths and stigmas, I guess stigmas, like everything in the community, everything in the medical practice is focused on the woman that is going through the treatment, as it should be. I mean, you're going through a lot, but the men, I think, are often literally ignored. And we brought this up with one of our doctors in one of the clinics, that she was always focused on my wife, always focused on my wife, always focused on my wife. And it was almost like I wasn't there sometimes, right? And that really resonated with her. And she's changing the way her clinic operates to be more inclusive for the men, have more services for the men, making sure she's hugging the men. She even said, like, I started to, I've always hugged the wife on the way out, but I never hug the man. Like,
Oh,
Tom,
wow.
how do I do that, right? What if they don't want to be hugged? And I'm like, ask. so now she's starting to ask, and the men want to hug too. The men are going through it, the men are hurting too. And she said there was one time that there was a man in the clinic that just burst into tears because he was being ignored and he was hurting, right? So I think there is, I don't know if that's a stigma, it's definitely not a myth, but out there in the community, there's not a lot of resources for men, there's not a lot of support for men. So kudos to Alex reaching out and helping other people, because it has to be someone within the community. They're the only ones who understand what you're going through, as we all know. Like, either side, you talk to your family, they give you the, why don't you adopt? You can spend the rest of your life traveling. It'll be so great. All that stuff. It doesn't help. But the women, they're going through it. You do have a lot of community to turn to that are in the community, but the men don't. So we have to be a bit, like Rob, I think, was saying before, a bit self-reliant. Like, how do I take care of myself? How do I refresh myself so that I can be a support? Because if my well runs dry, then, I'm not as good a support. But as far as stigma, yeah, I'd say, the clinics, everybody, men need reached out to. I think it's in our nature. We're not usually that open. It is, it's true. It's a generalization, but it's generally true, right? Men aren't forthcoming with their emotions. So I was asking the clinic if they can reach out more to men, because we welcome it, but we might not ask for it.
So many people in our support groups, like it's hard for people to reach out and ask, and that's for women. And I think that's tenfold hard for men to reach out and ask for help, especially in this vulnerable state. And again, during COVID, I feel like it really amplified how like women would go in for transfers and men had to wait in the car. But
that happened with us.
Oh, yeah. I was in the parking lot.
Too, right? You guys need to be there too, not just to support your partners, but like that's your potential child that's there, right? Like you are emotionally invested in your journey as well. And so to like leave you sitting in the parking lot, I didn't love that part of a lot of journeys at all. Which leads me into our next question. What did you do to support your mental health during that? Because I know those Google rabbit holes are not just for the female partners. I'm sure some of you have done those Google rabbit holes yourself. And yeah, so what did you do to support your own mental health? And we'll let whoever wants to start.
It was hard. The regular stuff, try and get some exercise in, try and get out my stress. Didn't really have many people to talk to. I was always trying not to burden my wife with my emotional baggage as well, because she's carrying so much, right? And why do I want to layer that on top of it? And for this might be helpful for any partners out there who are watching or listening. I talked to her about this. This really helped me. Like I opened up and I said, hey, this is what I'm feeling, right? This is what I'm doing. Is this right? And she educated me that, you know what, like, if you share that with me, that's not a burden for me, hearing that you're hurting too. That's not a burden for me, letting me know that you're frustrated too. That actually makes me feel good, makes me feel we're on the same page. It makes me feel like I'm not alone. It validates how I'm feeling as well. So that really helped me. My partner really helped me. From then on, I realized, okay, me saying I'm frustrated isn't putting more weight on her. It's actually helping her and good for her. So that helped me a lot going forward from there. Might help someone alleviate their stress too.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there, Tom, with just being able to talk to my wife just really helps for both of us, not just myself, but as well. Like I talk to like some of my family, they're very open and honest with how they feel, and no negativity there. And again, trying to understand, just so that, if it was a venting session for me, then that was cathartic at that point. But yeah, I went down like the Google Reddit rabbit hole. Couldn't find really anything specifically that was helpful to a certain degree. But I went into like my hobbies and my passions to help, in a way compartmentalize it a bit in that respect. But any person who I talked to, specifically some of my friends, like they were very like accepting and open. So like it was for them to understand how this whole journey was working for me and just sort of like be there and support me however I can. And whether that was like out golfing or going to the bar or like playing video games or whatever, it was just helpful that I can, still be happy and be able to express myself in a safe environment as well.
On that note, how did you talk to the men in your life? Or like, so when you say we played video games and that gave me a sense of fun, were you talking in depth about your feelings and how you were going through this really hard thing? Or was that more like you connecting with them and taking yourself away from what you were going through? And this is sort of for all of you, like how did those conversations with men, whether it's friends or parents or whoever in your life, like how did they respond to what you were going through?
At least for me, it was more of a easing in progressive process, not like, hey, here's a bomb, and then it's like, whoa, we have a lot to unpack here. It was more like there was like the down period of like what we were going through and just kind of pushing a little bit and just saying certain things. And then, of course, a lot of them tend to reach out and just try to get more clarity and a bit more answers from me. And then that's when I started to open up a lot more, which was really helpful, I found. Just because as I find that there's certain people in your life that you would love to talk and open up with, but sometimes they're closed off or they're too busy or they just don't have the time or whatever. So it was frustrating for the people that you always tend to rely on, but it's the people that you least expect to really help with that. Was
So
really
true.
amazing and surprising as well, I think.
Yeah, you're saying that the people you least expect, and I think by the end I was like leaking emotions to like my dental hygienist or something like that, right? Like, whoever would listen, but I also think that I don't know that I asked for help like very directly, right? So, I think my friends to some extent knew what I was going through, and they could, I think you can tell when your friends are sad or when something's not right. Um, but I think, my friends were waiting for me to come to them, and I would drop hints and I would say things once in a while, but like I was never like, I need you right now to sit down and like, listen to me, or like we need this, or I need this from you, you know? And I wonder if like a more like literal approach would have had them be like, oh yeah, no, I'm down to do it. I just didn't know that that was a thing that you needed, you know? Because we would get on, play video games, go golfing, whatever the case may be. And I think in their minds, they were saying like, oh, well, we're out here having fun. We're with him. We're like taking his mind off of it. And that's the role that we should be playing. Right. Or maybe I'm giving them too much credit. I don't know. But like the idea being that like I never actually sat down and was like, I need you. Right. Um, except for maybe like one or two people, like my cousin I'm very close to, and to this day he still is charging me for therapy. So, take what you can get, right? But
Did
yeah,
any
I
of
think
you
the direct
use
ask, it really it would be my takeaway, I guess.
for that their friends for and support? Did anybody use like a therapist specifically for fertility, like where you were able to like unload more in depth, and because you're paying them to listen to everything in detail? And kind of leading to that too, were any of your support, how in depth were you able to go? Because Alex, you said it was sort of a process, kind of testing the waters to see, because it can be a tricky conversation. So yeah, those are my kind of two follow-ups with that.
Yeah, for me, like as I said, there was a process, so it was like easing into it, and then by the end, I was like, "This is everything happening, all details." Like a lot of them were very like intrigued and interested because it's a process that they didn't have any involvement with, or let alone know anybody. So it was intriguing for them. But yeah, like they were really helpful with trying to understand where things were in my headspace, and just trying to be able to navigate that with them was really amazing, just because I wasn't sure what to expect of like, well, how much information should I actually let them know and divulge and whatnot. And then literally after that, like anybody who asked, I was like, yeah, no, this is everything, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, whoa, wow. Okay. Interesting. I'm like, yeah, I know.
And now they know.
Yeah,
I love it.
I was pretty open with everybody, like everybody I knew or worked with or whatever, knew what we were going through, knew when we had losses and stuff. I don't think most of them really understood, but they were sympathetic or empathetic. But I was surprised by, once you start talking about it, how many people have been through it, or someone very close to them have been through it. Because most people aren't talking about it. But once you do open up and talk to people, that really surprised me. How many people do know the experience because they have been through it. And for those people, you can talk about things a lot more in depth because they've been there and done that. So that I found that helpful.
Yeah. That's great. That's awesome. How, and it's okay to talk about this, Rob. Caley gave permission, right? How did your fertility struggles affect you as a couple? And what did you feel like the biggest hurdles were in those conversations? We did touch on that a little bit at the beginning, with, again, the surprises and in your journey. But yeah, what was that like for you as a couple from, again, your male perspective? What did you find really difficult?
I think that I don't know that I found being a couple necessarily difficult, right? Caley and I generally communicate pretty well, I think. She got me to go on her podcast, so I think we're doing all right that in that regard. But um, I think more it was me trying to figure out like when do I step in, you know? And if you've listened to Kaylee's journey on your other one, there's your plug. I don't know what it's called. I'm sorry. What's it called, Sarah?
Oasis Fertility Podcast.
Yeah, thank you. But if you've listened to that, like, you know, there's a moment in that where Kaylee admits that, like, you know, we were both off the deep end, right? Like it was just like failure after failure, and we were trying to grind it out, and there was no grinding it out, and we had to take a step back. And I was seeing it, and I was like, do I step in? Do I not? Like, I know my wife and I know that she's the person who wants to get this done, but like I'm watching her erode, and as a result, like I'm eroding a little bit. So like, you know, I gotta step in. And though I think those decisions, like trying to balance, and it's again, I think it's the ecosystem, right? Like trying to balance all of that was the hardest part, because we both wanted the same goal, but we both had maybe a little bit of a different approach to how we should get there, right? Like there was one point where, you know, we had we were looking at switching clinics for like the nth time or something, and I was like, I don't think we should do that, right? Because like every time we do, we have to restart, and there's this whole process, and then you got to pay for transfers, and like, or like, you know, to like get like storage transfers. And I was like, do we need to stop right now? We need to think about like how we are gonna do that, right? And I'm lucky to have a partner who was receptive, right? And that didn't want to just be like, no, Rob, I don't care about what you're saying. Like, let's move forward, right? But I think from a relationship perspective, it was just, yeah, trying to make sure that my emotionally broken decision and maybe like her emotionally broken decision were still like lining up, and we were still like working generally in parallel to get to the end, if that makes sense.
Yeah. To that point, I feel like I was go, go, go and like on a tear. And Rob was really good about stepping in and saying, like, I don't know if you're okay. Like, you want to slow down a sec, and like maybe we rethink this, and maybe we sit down and talk about it and take a breath, or maybe it's time like take a break, talk to a therapist. Let's like, you know, so he was really good at stepping in and being that like grounding force for me.
But
And
the
just for the
implications of that, though, right? Like from my perspective, I'm just like, if I tell her to stop, am I like, you know, I think
Are
actually at
you the
one
bad
point,
guy?
well, I think you accused me of
Yeah.
like, we got to keep going. And I was like, ah. Like, I think that comment right there says we should not keep going, right?
Yeah.
And we had it out a little bit in terms of not, you know, like in terms of trying to figure out like what is the next move, right?
As a third party who has been through that conversation with my partner, maybe not at the time was I very grateful for him making those comments, but in hindsight, it actually was really effective, again, for the journey, for the relationship. And so I appreciate a level head in it, because again, from a female's perspective, we're in it, our hormones are all over the map, we're going through it emotionally, so are you guys, but we can't necessarily maybe think clearly, and I am admitting that.
No, I didn't either. I got mad when he stopped me.
Clearly, so to have you as that person to step in, very grateful for it. I know it's a hard conversation for you guys to have with us for sure. How about Tom? Did you have anything really difficult as a couple that any difficult conversations that you had to have?
Yeah, well, I think the first part of the question was, what did you learn about your relationship? And I learned, or how did it affect our relationship? And it brought us closer. I learned how strong we are and how resilient we are and how well we work together and how well we communicate and how well we understand each other. We did have, you know, I don't know if they were difficult discussions. We respect each other and we listen to each other. And, you know, there's always the discussions of switching clinics. Should we keep going or should we take a break? There was one time we did take a break, which was very, very hard for my wife, but it was very, very needed. Like Rob was saying, you know, I could see the deterioration, right? Going forward in that state was just going to get worse. But, you know, there was some you know, and do we go with, do we do another transfer? Do we transfer the embryos we have, or do we do a, you know, get more eggs first, you know, type of things? We have some more stored before we go forward. All those decisions we made jointly, and sometimes our opinions weren't the same, and sometimes she prevailed, but sometimes I prevailed as well, right? I think you just have to have like good communication, like it sounds like everyone here does. So I don't know if they were hard decisions. I wouldn't say there were difficult discussions, but hard decisions for sure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Absolutely. Communication. If you have good communication, it's not necessarily as difficult. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely helped us with our communication skills, just being able to bring us closer to really talk about like what we really want, what is really going to be best for us. And again, just both what Tom and Rob were talking about with like those difficult decisions of, all right, well, do we try this other clinic? Are they better? What are they going to do differently that this clinic hasn't done for us? Is it worth the commute and all this extra time and money spent to see if they can do anything differently that will be more positive and more effective for us? And then, of course, with being a male, you want to try to be that level-headed, grounded person so that when your partner is, like everyone said, go, 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 just want to make like these decisions real quick. It's like, well, let's hold on. Let's take a second here. Let's look at this logically. Let's talk this out. See if this is the right step, or like, let's look at these types of options and see where we want to go and focus our time and energy on. Because when you're going through it really quickly, you might decide to go down this one route and then quickly want to, oh, no, maybe this was really better, but that you've already gone down this path. So it's like taking your time, taking a minute to breathe, to gather your thoughts, and really make that collective decision together as a couple. And the fact that we did was great because it was really easy for us to decide this is where we want to go. This is where we want to end up. We're going to take a couple detours or do some windy paths, but we'll eventually get there. So I would say that's definitely where we were at.
I feel like it's hard because you want to find the best clinic and question everything, but then it gets to a certain point where you're like, we need to stay somewhere and trust someone, and there's not always better out there, you know, and you have to stop and focus.
And it also is like, how far are you willing to go for that as well?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you, and it goes along with this question, again, some of those conversations, like, again, might not be difficult, but might be hard to initiate sometimes. Do you guys have any tips for the men out there who want to initiate those conversations with their partners? Again, the partners are usually, the females are usually like, let's go, go, go. And again, frequently we need our men partners to kind of step in. What would you say to people who want to address those with the partners that maybe don't know how to start that conversation? Because again, it can be a difficult conversation to start, to take a break or to really sit down and discuss like what your long-term plan is. Does anybody have any tips for that?
Probably pick your moment. If you're feeling super raw about it, then maybe you sleep on it. I don't know. Don't do it right after a failed transfer or something like that, right? When the, emotions are high or whatever. Because I think, one thing that I was always, that was always in the back of my head was like rebuilding the hope cycle, right? And like, this one's gonna work. In my head, I was like, okay, like that's the tack we got to take, right? So like, I guess like finding some time in that spot where the decision kind of can be made, right? And then approaching it, I think, with empathy, right? I think, sounds like, expressing your own feelings is a good thing. So I think leading with like, I'm concerned, I think is always good. But I think it also depends on how your relationship works and how you talk too. Like, don't try and jam a style in either, right? Because some people don't sit down at the dinner table every Sunday night and like review the week or whatever, So
Something Rob does that I don't know if you do, you know that you do, Rob, is you'll say to me, is it okay if I bring something up with you? Or is this a good time to like sit down and talk about something tougher? Which is helpful because I can say no. I'm grumpy.
yeah, I think I also tell you like you get like 3 no's and then I'm forcing this upon you. So yeah, don't use your
pretty
vetoes
much.
too early kind of thing, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Only so many vetoes. I love that. That's good advice too. Tom or Alex, do you have any tips for the guys out there?
I'd say if you know your partner, and if you are seeing these things, the deterioration, realize that has some validity, and what you're thinking may not be the go forward decision, but your input is vital and critical, because like you have both said, your partners did that, and in hindsight you're grateful for it. They did see things you weren't seeing because you are the one going through everything. You've got a lot on your plate. You're going mind, body, spirits, going through a lot, right? So part of the partner, I think the role is to have a different perspective and notice things and bring them to the table. They're valid, bring them to the table. No regrets. That was our theme through this whole journey, right? No regrets. If there's something to try, we'll try it. If we have an idea, we'll table it. We don't want to look back saying we wish we would have, right?
Honestly, there's something really valuable about a non-hormone addled perspective being in the mix too.
Yeah, 100%.
It definitely is a grounding aspect to have, just because with being in a couple and with your partner would definitely want to like respect your thoughts and your opinion, because you're both going through this journey together. It's not just them and they're driving the vehicle, you're in it together. So you should definitely be involving each other with your opinions and your ideas and be able to discuss them freely. And it just makes it a lot easier to make that decision together. So I definitely would agree with that.
And
You actually said something that made me think, because you said driving the vehicle. I was thinking that like all I wanted through this entire process was like a job or a role, right? Because like Caley got to do everything, she got to do all like the needles and everything. So like all I wanted was like, I would say, let me drive you today. She'd be like, I can drive myself. And I'd be like, but I need to do something, right? Like I need to be part of this in whatever way that I can. So, I think that if your role is, guy who brings up when everything is on fire, then like maybe that's a valid role. I don't know, right? Like, to your points, right? Like feel it out in your relationship, right?
I've actually given men that advice before, like men going through it. Like I've had a few friends say to me, like, what can I do for my wife? And I've said, like, give them, like, for us, it was that you took all the receipts and you just did all of the, whatchamacallits,
taxes.
Yes. Not taxes, the when you take everything. What?
Yeah.
Budgeting and
whatever.
spreadsheet.
Yeah, I did the accounting or whatever.
He did all of it, which like was such a burden off of me. It's such a silly thing, but it was really important for me. So,
and it's funny, so you just wanted a role, Rob, because my husband really just wanted a role. So when he got to do my progesterone and oil shots in my butt, he really enjoyed that because he was just involved. There you go, Alex too, right? You just got to be involved and have a hand in it. So yeah, I get that for sure. That's fantastic advice from all of you. Thank you.
So if we can flip the script a little bit on this subject, we talk at Oasis a lot about like, oh, what can your husband do to help you through this process? But can you guys give some advice on what can your partner do for you? Like as the guy in the situation, what can your wife or partner do to support you?
I think that's a really tough question for a guy to answer because they're already doing so much. We're not inclined to ask them to do more. Yeah, that's a difficult one. Maybe what would have helped me more is helping me open up, helping me communicate more, maybe yeah, reaching out more. But that's hard for her to do because she's going through so much, right? So I wouldn't ask that or expect that. And maybe that's just a man thing, right? Yeah, that's a hard question.
Really interesting that you're all reticent to answer this.
Yeah. Maybe make sure, that, Alex has time to go golfing, right? Make sure, Rob has some time to, play the video games or whatever, right? Even though there's all this other stuff going on, or maybe even encouraging that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Get out. I'll be okay for the afternoon, right?
Exactly. I
Yeah.
agree with that, where it's like you don't want to ask because it seems selfish when they're doing all of this and you're just doing everything you possibly can, your heart, body, and soul, as much as a male can, to help with their partner. It just doesn't seem necessary. But I agree, like helping to open up more, to communicate your thoughts and feelings is definitely something that's easily acceptable, given with how the journey, where you are in the journey as well. But yeah, being able to like just do a little bit more focusing on yourself sometimes can really help, I would say, as well, just so that you get in the right headspace to have those conversations when they arise, or to plan ahead, just so that you're not fumbling at the last second to make that decision that might not be ideal for you, or making sure if you're doing progesterones that you're actually focusing on the spot that needs to for the needle to go into, stuff like that.
Yeah, fantastic. What about you, Rob?
I mean, I want to say, don't run yourself so ragged that you can't check in with your spouse. And I think that goes for like both parties, right? Men and women. But I think I'm going to lock in the answer. Give me a hug. I think, yeah, just walk up and give me a hug, and I'll probably melt immediately in that moment. And then you have me. Then I'll do the dishes and we can talk about what the next step is,
I love that. That's awesome advice, guys. For my husband, it was more like he's telling me to get out. He's like, can you just go get a manicure, go out with your girlfriend, like just go and give me some space so that you can take care of you and I can take care of me. And that was like the best thing. So yeah, him taking care of himself was getting me out of the house. So which is effective for both of us. Sometimes we just needed space. For me, I forced him to do therapy. He wasn't necessarily for it at the beginning, but to get like a professional to talk to him and talk to us as a couple was really effective for both of us, and keeping us that line of communication open and like a safe space. That's what we found very effective. So I wanted to add that too. But all of you guys had a great perspective. So the journeys can be long. And again, you guys are all here with us today. So you're a bit more of an open book now, but when you first started off, were you an open book right from the start, or did you keep it more to yourself, and why, one way or the other?
For me, I definitely was a slow burner. I talked to certain individuals to let them know our process, and then kind of the early stages just wasn't sort of to gauge the temperature of like how that conversation would go, and then definitely progressed to being fully open, and up to even now these days when people just curious to ask first time, I just tell them this is the entire journey I've been through. I'm not ashamed of it. It's unfortunate to what we've had to go through, but it kind of showcased the struggles that we had, and then also building up our relationship to be even closer, just to show like other people the hope that we still have up to this point too, that it hasn't completely diminished, that we're still trying, and that therefore gives other people hope that when I just blatantly talk about it, that if they're starting about it, then they can come talk to me about what their thoughts are about if they're considering it, or what to expect. So I have no shame at this point. I just say what I've been through and hope it helps in some way.
It's interesting. We talk to a lot of people and we hear a lot that it brings people closer together. And you'd think with it being such a hard thing that it would push people apart sometimes. But I feel like we see, I don't know if you agree, Sarah, like we see it more often that it brings couples closer. It's kind of a silver lining.
It is sometimes, and I think it depends on the journey because, again, I'm very honest and my husband's very honest in the fact that we were very close to breaking up over fertility treatment. Our journey was 14 years, so it was very long, but it was near the beginning, and it was just after like medicated cycles and IUIs, and at that point, I wanted to drive ahead, and the communication was difficult, and he needed the break. And again, that communication at the beginning, and again, we were still probably about 7 years into our marriage, not even just our relationship, just our marriage at that time. And but we both had talked to divorce lawyers at that point because we were just not on the same page. He was potentially happy to be childless, and at that time, I was just not. So I tote, again, that conversation and therapy and getting on the same page and taking breaks. But now, again, in hindsight, right? Hindsight's 2020, going through the rest of our journey, multiple IVFs and the losses, and our adoption journey, ultimately, we are a much stronger team because of it and because we were almost so broken. So we, again, got to that rock bottom. But again, at least for me, my husband was my rock, which, again, you guys, I feel like sometimes you feel like that's your role to be, but he'll say the same thing, that he was able to trust in me as well on the journey. So I think you have to get to a hard place before it makes you stronger. And there is going to come a time where it's either going to break your relationship or make you stronger. It can go either way. But
if you can get through it, you can get through pretty much anything.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's it. Take care of yourself.
There's nothing else that we're gonna face that's gonna be any match to this.
Parenthood.
Right? No worries. No.
Yeah, parenthood's easy compared to everything we went through to get there. But yeah, it's, again, as I said, it's really important to have those conversations, have the therapy, have sounding boards, have support, both for him, because he needed it too, and me. And again, that's what the piece that was missing, was the support for him going through it at that time when it almost broke it. But when he got the support and I got the support and we came together to support each other, it went much more successfully. So yeah.
I think Tom and Rob, you didn't get a chance to answer about like whether you feel like you were an open book throughout that journey, or if you kind of opened up and now you're here sharing so much.
Well, I didn't have much choice because my wife's an open book.
Right.
So she was all over everywhere, documenting everything. I also have 2 older children, so I thought it was important to let them know that we, this was our plan. We were trying, right? So I was open from the beginning.
Love that.
I don't think I can be closed. I
was going to say, it's no question for you.
But I guess when I was considering the question, I think I started out more open than I ended, in the sense that, you go in and you're all like, we're going to do this. And then you get beat down once and you're like, oh, that's okay. We'll get the next one or whatever. And then by like year 3 of it, I think I was just so deep in the grind, right, that it was just like, all right, next time. And I didn't realize until I like got to the other side of it, like how kind of deep I was in it. I think I was still open, people knew, my boss at work knew, high level that I was going through it. I didn't divulge too much, but I think I started out a lot more willing to talk to people, right? Because again, 3 years later, what am I supposed to say to my mom again? Like, yep, still doing the same thing, right? So it's like, I think actually I went in the reverse order, where by the time we actually got there, I was, I don't know how close we were, Caley, to having to make different decisions. So I don't know.
It's interesting. You hear that a lot with sharing about transfers too. Like at the beginning, people share everything, and after a few disappointments, it's like, let's just not tell anyone we're doing a transfer and then just see what happens,
And it can be all consuming too. It can be everything you want to talk about all the time, right? It's all you think about, at least again, from a woman's perspective. You're here to tell us if it's a man's perspective, if it's that all consuming and all you want to talk about. But then, you feel like you alienate people because it's all you talk about all the time. Right?
Yeah.
that can be really
But
difficult.
I also I didn't want to have to answer to people. Right. So
Yeah.
it's, to Kaylee's point, it's just like, okay, wait, we have a transfer on, June 18th, and on June 19th, my phone's blowing up. Like, did it work yet? And I'm just like, how I don't even know that. Like, do you know what I mean? And having to kind of educate people and ask people, I just kind of didn't have it in me by the end as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, it gets
Um,
exhausting.
yeah. So, now that I'm kind of on the other side of it, I would like to be educating people more. I like to have the kind of post-op conversation a little bit, the don't wish it on my worst enemy kind of conversation with people, and I find that they're very receptive to oh wow, you went through that, right?
Mhm.
So yeah.
Actually, the last question is kind of on that same thing, which is would you say this journey still affects you to this day now that you're sort of on the other side of it, and in what ways?
Yeah, I still have PTSD for sure.
Still affects. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think Alex was going to say something else there.
Yeah, please.
No, I sometimes I guess for me sometimes it's the dreams of things that have happened, and they get deep into me, and then my subconscious goes crazy and wake up in the middle of the night with sweats or screaming once, I think it was.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not ideal for sure, but yeah.
Sorry to hear that, man.
Yeah, so we've ended our journey. The epic quest has been fulfilled, but our son's just 5 weeks old, and
Wow.
it's just kind of starting to sink in that he's permanently here. Everything was perfect through the pregnancy, but every day it felt like this could be taken away at any second. Every
we were
day
totally
through the
like
end of the
that.
pregnancy, even after birth, it's like this could be taken away any second. And I think that's just the PTSD of all the losses. So I think that definitely still lingers, but we're starting to get used to it.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I'll tell you, Rob and I were exactly the same way. He had to take me to the ER at 4 a.m. the day after Christmas. I was panicking. It doesn't leave you even once you get to the other side.
PTSD is a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I was, like I said, I was so deep in it maybe the year before, that I didn't realize how deep I was until I got to the other side. And then I was having all these conflicting feelings where I'm like, wow, look what we did. And this is so nice. And, um, and let's move on from it. But even now I find, there are times when I don't know, negative for no reason, or I think I'm not deserving of a good thing to happen to me or something like that. And I think it's just kind of still in me a little bit. Um, and there's just lots of reflection on when something like that comes up, being like, no man, ground yourself in the fact that you have a family to feed, it's dinner time or whatever, right? Just same kind of onwards and upwards, move forward, but trying to also just not shed it, because it's part of us now, right? But it's yeah, trying to figure out what it looks like now after a pandemic, and then 3 years of this, and then into now, what does normal look like now going forward? So
Right. Yeah, we definitely will live in it for a long time. And I think that is a testament to the three of you gentlemen being here with us today to share, again, your view, your perspective, your stories a little bit, because for us and Oasis and those of us who are conversation starters, we find a lot of healing in talking to people and helping them guide. So I don't know if Alex, you feel that way when people come and ask you about the fertility journey. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but Rob is excitingly going to be our male fertility support group leader, conversation starter coming up in the very near future. So I hope that you guys can, and Tom, with your Instagram and again, with your wives and sharing your story, I hope that you guys can have a little bit of healing, because I don't think it ever really goes away, those feelings. for anybody who have been through it. Again, PTSD is that great example, but sharing your stories, I hope you can find some healing from that, because it really is, it matters for those people that are deep in their journeys or just starting their journeys and looking for information and not having much to turn in the form of male support. So thank you again for being
I think Sarah and I have both found purpose through giving back, like for purpose for all that pain, I would say.
Mhm.
So it sounds like all three of you are finding that in your own ways too, which is really wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got some guest speakers too, so.
Yeah, absolutely. We would always love to start in-person men's groups all over Ontario. Like we have our women's support groups currently. Again, we are so excited to have a male fertility support group starting soon. So we hope you guys can attend, join. Again, those come join us co-host to Rob. We would be happy to have you, Alex and Tom, and appreciate you sharing your story, and congratulations to you both and all three of you on your families, soon to be families. We're very excited. We're coming to the end. Oh my gosh, look at our perfect timing today. This never happens. So you guys are fantastic. Thank you for joining us. To our viewers, we just want to remind you that our Oasis Fertility Support Network Fertility Party is this coming Sunday, June 22nd. It's at the King Edward Hotel in Toronto. I think there are just a few tickets left. So if you haven't got yours, there's still time. Get them before they're gone. It's going to be a fun event. Men are welcome to, believe it or not, so you're welcome to come. Our next in-person and virtual support groups are the following Monday, so less than a week from now. So please don't forget to sign up. Join our Instagram, join our email list, join our Facebook, so you can find out when our men's group is starting really, 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 really soon. And just visit oasisfsn.com to find your locations and to sign up. We will see you every Wednesday for Fertility Village Live for more amazing guests and conversations, perspectives, and professionals. We want to thank you again for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much for being here, guys.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye,
folks.
guys.
Bye.